So, Amie,
Zachary.
Avery,
Yes,
Avery.
Frank.
Zachary. Blank. This is my cat.
I wanted to go on the record that I'm not it's really kind of a confessional to the two of you. I think I'm taking my name out of the running for Pope.
Didn't know your name was in the running.
Are you even Catholic?
Yeah, you're not
No,
Catholic.
no. Well, okay, I'm Episcopalian, right? And we're kind of like,
That's
if
not
you think about it,
Catholic.
we're kind of like the long game Catholics.
I don't know about that.
We're kind of like Catholics that chose the proper faith, right? When Jesus came down and told Henry VIII to divorce his wife, we're kind of like, that was Jesus that asked us to divorce King Henry VIII's wife.
Please write in, Catholics.
I didn't realize this was an anti-Catholic podcast. As a former Catholic.
Well, it's not that it's an anti-Catholic podcast. It's just that I no longer feel comfortable being in the running to be the kind of lead of the Catholic Church.
Okay.
I was rewatching Catholic Extended Universe flick, Conclave. You've seen Conclave with the Tooch.
I haven't seen it yet, but I do know there's a absolutely diabolical vape rip at some point.
There are like 3 diabolical vape rips. There are, but it's in scene. What's important? I think it's so important to have a film that's grounded in the world that it's in, right? And once the Catholic Church, once the conclave has decided on a papal candidate, they release white smoke out of the smokestack, right?
Yeah.
That's actually, I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty deep on Catholic lore. It's actually like
It's them ripping.
Rip. They rip.
It's a collective vape rip.
They take a fat rip of the vape and they blow it up the tube altogether.
Oh, I never knew that.
You know that?
Yeah. I think actually this round of the papal decision is sponsored by Juul.
Thank you, Juul, for keeping the Catholic Church afloat all these years.
Right.
Really playing the long game. Thank you, Philip Morris. And if Philip Morris, you're looking for other things to sponsor, Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. Welcome to Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line, where we throw bags at the state's biggest stories. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. It's Wednesday, and I'm joined today by Iowa Starting Line's Amie Rivers and Avery Staker. This week, Iowa's growing youth mental health crisis. Despite a 15% surge in demand since 2018, funding hasn't kept pace, leaving families describing the search for care as a full-time job. We'll also explore why the Iowa Legislature is extending beyond Friday's deadline, with key issues hanging in the balance. Plus, a look at Governor Kim Reynolds' surprising lawsuit against the Des Moines Register, blocking the release of her emails. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm joined today by Iowa Starting Line's newsletter scribe, straight from the cloister, Amie Rivers. Hello, Amie.
Vaping in the cloister, yeah.
Vaping in the cloister, Amie Rivers. And crawling from the very depths of the content mines, we have Iowa Starting Line's social strategist, Avery Staker. Hello, Avery.
You're making me sound like a goblin.
Am I wrong?
You're kind of right.
Content goblin?
Content gremlin.
This is
don't feed me after midnight. Don't let me go on Instagram after midnight.
Not derogatory. Content goblin.
Content goblin.
For our first story, a news story from the Des Moines Register documents the youth mental health crisis in Iowa. Despite a 15% increase in young Iowans seeking mental health services since 2018, funding has struggled to keep pace with demand. The Des Moines Register spoke with one parent who adopted 5 boys from foster care with behavioral health needs. And the story describes this like really just tragic hunt for proper care as a something she refers to as a full-time job that leaves them emotionally and mentally drained. According to the numbers obtained by the Register, half of Iowa youth with major depression are not receiving treatment at all.
It's terrible. We can argue about why that is, but the whole point of the story is that they're not spending any more money on it. Like the state and federal money spent on these services is still like at or below pre-pandemic. And like stuff's gotten a lot worse since the pandemic. Like kids are further behind than they should be. You know, they weren't able to go to school and access those school resources like they could. And now it's just spiraling. Like the state pushed back in this article, but it just seems like their only excuse is like, we're going to move money around because like there's more and more youth. Like as of 2023, I think it said more than 63,000 youth received behavioral health services in the state of Iowa compared to 55,000 youth in 2018. So that's like a 15% increase. And we're spending the same amount of money, which is actually going less far because of inflation.
To be fair, youth mental health care is a hugely difficult problem to be going about trying to fix, right? They're varied issues that people are dealing with. We underfund so many of our state's services, so much of our social safety net. I mean, when folks don't have stable access to food, when folks don't have stable access to housing, healthcare, et cetera, beginning to solve kind of underlying issues, right? Whether to begin not just talking through it, but medicating, right? If someone should use something like, say, a SSRI's prescription, right? That's expensive, right? And like folks' ability to get that care reliably can be a huge challenge.
And getting the care, period, is a challenge because the providers aren't being paid anything where they used to be. I mean, they quoted one provider that was saying it's directly tied to the reimbursement that they're not receiving. Only about 45% of psychiatry physicians nationwide accepted new patients who are on Medicaid. Like that's super low in a state where, you know, you have more and more people signing up for Medicaid. You know, they have lots of people on these waiting lists who aren't getting served. It's taking a long time to get served. People get frustrated and they give up. So it's just like compounding issues.
I like that point a lot, Amie, because you hear sometimes, and my algorithm's a little fucked, so I get a lot of like kind of conspiracy. I like kind of conspiracy minded red pill content, and one of the things that comes up pretty consistently, right, is this notion that like why do all these kids suddenly have mental illness? Why now? The reality is, right, like we're a modicum better at diagnosing.
The fact that the pandemic plays such a huge role in the difference that we're seeing over the last few years, I think we need to focus on how this issue compounds with people having access to these services in schools.
Yes.
And what it means to have children in schools, in those physical locations with people who aren't their parents, but do understand the nuances of like youth behavioral health.
Right.
And how that having those resources, how ensuring that those people know what to do and have the support that they need and are paid well, how that contributes to the ecosystem of the issue of like youth behavioral health. And I think, speaking of like an ecosystem, like that's the most important to me. The most important like aspect of this is the fact that like with youth issues, things that primarily affect children, it's really easy to see how they connect to other issues in the state. And like reading this story, it's like I feel like we're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with like state issues, and it's so clear here because, you know, why are there so many kids that have behavioral health issues? You asked this question earlier. It's a food issue. It's an economic issue. It's a resource access issue. It's like there are so many reasons why kids have varying degrees and varying types of behavioral health issues, be it, you know, anxiety or depression or any kind of like social, emotional health. Like there's so many reasons why that is. And it's things that the state is doing or the state is not doing that exacerbates those kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm. And when you've got adults that are struggling, that is always going to affect the kids. And so if you make it harder for adults to access food, for adults to access good paying jobs, for adults to, you know, basically have their needs met, they're then going to struggle. Their kids are then going to struggle as a byproduct of that. So I think it's just a holistic thing that we need to look at as a state. Like, stop de-investing all of these programs that have been helping people and you will see these numbers turn around.
It's almost like the social safety net that we've been under-resourcing, and then when it's unsuccessful, when a program fails, we cut it, right? It's almost like that was a bad idea, right? Like maybe the chickens are coming home to roost, and like we are learning that our administrative state is actually incapable of doing some of these operations that our people desperately need.
Right.
This is it's a great story. I will link it in the show notes. It's by the Des Moines Register health reporter Michaela Ram, who's been working on kind of a series related to youth mental health. I highly recommend if you're if you're touched by these issues, if you're interested in these issues, that you check out the series that they're working on over there. Second story, the Iowa Legislature's 2025 session is expected to continue beyond its scheduled conclusion this Friday as lawmakers struggle to finalize the state's budget and several contentious policy proposals. We've got a few issues still hanging over these conversations, and we're going to go through them here on the podcast. So I've been spending a lot of time here in Des Moines covering the Iowa Legislature, and as I've been kind of planning what my plans for the summer, because God forbid, I kind of want to take some PTO, and we've been waiting.
God forbid we time off.
It's all been kind of pointing towards this Friday. But if you're listening to this on Wednesday when the episode drops, Friday is when the stipends for Iowa Legislature ends, right? So they no longer get money for their hotel rooms, no longer get money for their food. And the idea is that we end it there as a kind of a hard deadline, a hard stop on how long the legislature can operate. The idea is we're a part-time legislature. We don't want these people in Des Moines all year long. We want to get them in, get them out, right? That's why we have the system of funnels, the two legislative funnels that kind of whittle down the number of bills that we can take on during the session, with the idea that we're eventually going to terminate. Iowa Republicans control both chambers as well as the governor. They have the ability to kind of do whatever their caucus decides they want to do. But they can't even get a budget passed on time. This is becoming a yearly spectacle. Once upon a time, there used to be kind of joint budget meetings to talk about budget targets and kind of trying to get folks at the table, but to kind of discuss what these might look like. This year, we kind of got to wait for the smoke to clear in the back room in order for us to get a sense of like what we're going to use to fund these bills. This week, the Iowa Senate Republicans and governor said that they agreed to a budget, some budget targets. The House Republicans have said that they want a little bit more for a couple of costs, but we're still talking about the idea that these are gonna result in like some major funding boon for our state resources seems unlikely.
The fact that they took so long to get a school budget, that literally the deadline that they imposed on schools to get their budget passed, and they have majority control of all the chambers. They didn't have to do that. It's just disrespect to the schools, basically. And they're still working on like the full budget as of today. And like you said, they're supposed to be done May 1st.
Dude.
Well, they're supposed to be done, but
they're supposed to be.
What
are they?
But we are sinners in the hands of an angry GOP.
Dude, free us, please.
One of the things, there was a good write up by Katerina Sestarik over at Iowa Public Radio, looking at kind of what issues still kind of hang over some of these conversations. There has not been a substantive regulation on carbon capture pipelines in Iowa. These have been really controversial. You see the anti-carbon pipeline folks come to the Capitol virtually every week to raise Cain about the issue in order to try to get prevent these big companies from using public domain to seize property and build pipelines over it.
Yeah.
The House passed an omnibus bill that one Democrat state representative Sammy Sheets said was a messaging bill, right? Said that like y'all are passing this omnibus bill, but it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate. The governor's not going to sign off on it. So like, what is it you're actually doing here? What do y'all make of these the lack of an answer on these on regulations for carbon capture pipelines?
Well, it's because the big donors, Rastetter et al., are big Republican donors. So these people are the summit folks, the carbon pipeline folks. They're donating very heavily to Republicans. Everybody knows this, right? So I mean, it becomes a very tough issue for a Republican if your campaign is being financed by, the carbon pipelines to be listening to your constituents, I suppose.
Period. Mic drop.
Another piece of this that kind of hangs over all these is Governor Kim Reynolds' controversial preschool funding bill that some child care providers fear could undermine existing programs. Have y'all read much about this one?
I saw that it wants to improve access to full-day preschool for 4-year-olds using $16 million of existing child care funding to start new partnerships for full-day school options. So basically, you're just stealing from another pile that's already working on the child care problem. I don't really see. I understand why people think that would be difficult,
especially people like in the field that money goes to. It's
right.
Hey, you gave this to us. Why are you taking it away again? Don't. Hey, wait. Hey, don't do that. Hey.
The lack of childcare slots in this state, right? The difficulty of keeping folks in these jobs given the wages that they're afforded. It's from soup to nuts. It's a problem that I think has become just a real pall on the state, right? You read outside of Iowa, everywhere is struggling with this. There's actually has not been like a really there hasn't been too much success in the space in terms of like building this kind of capacity that we need, but. In a state, you've got Republicans saying that they want to see more. They want to see us have more children. They want to see us do these things.
Right.
But like we're gutting our social safety net. We've been talking about this child care crisis, but unable to effectuate any change about it.
They've got money for other stuff. I mean, you're going to talk about it in a second, but they've got money for increasing their own natural disaster funding, and they've got money to throw into these other programs. Put money where you say that there's a priority. I mean, Republicans have specifically said, Reynolds has specifically said, childcare is a priority. Prove it.
I keep hearing about a $2 billion budget surplus somewhere. I keep hearing about that.
I mean,
let's go. It's going away very quickly with these tax cuts.
That's like a justification that people have used for like, oh, the Iowa economy is doing so well because we have $2 billion extra dollars in our budget. Where the hell is it?
Yeah.
Well, yes, Minnesota might have like a budget deficit, but they have free school lunch for all their kids.
Right.
Like,
right.
What is the tangible on the ground impact of like having a budget surplus or a budget deficit if everything else sucks?
Tax cuts for the rich.
One of the challenges that we as a state are running is that we have been in the process of implementing a pretty serious decrease in our income tax, right? And one of the challenges is the state. This has been that and property taxes is kind of how we raise money in the state. There are a couple of other taxes, obviously, but these are two major sources of revenue, and we're gutting our local government's abilities to impose tax on our local government's ability to raise property taxes. On the income tax front, I mean, we're still waiting to see kind of like how that shakes, this phase down in revenue for from the income tax is going to kind of shake out in our state. And we're running a budget deficit, right? Where the amount of money that we have is not equal to the amount that we're spending. And things like the budget surplus has been a way that we're kind of cash flowing state government. But that's not a long-term proposition, right?
Nope.
To be spending beyond our means and also like not just being unwilling to have a conversation about kind of like getting that in check, but like actively saying like, oh, actually we need to cut more taxes, right? Like that's the thing that we need to be doing. I can't do that with my household, but like I love that state government has decided that they can do that with their house.
I mean, you could for a little bit.
I could, and Tito Sprite Zero, it's a guy named Schmidt. My son would lose his cat food this next week over it. We'd be back on the dry food, baby.
Poor Tito.
Austerity for the cats. Anti-SLAPP legislations have also, there's been a bill to like kind of strengthen Iowa's protections against SLAPP lawsuits. This will come up in a second with our next story, but have y'all, have y'all seen much coverage of the kind of SLAPP lawsuit SLAPP bill that's been working its way through the Iowa legislative session?
Us journalists love it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it paves the way. It allows us to do our to do our job and not fear for unreasonable lawsuits.
If it works as intended, like it's designed to basically like say, if you're bringing a lawsuit disingenuously, then you have to pay the other side's legal fees. So yeah, that's decent.
And period.
Yeah.
And yes, especially with like I mean, we'll talk about this again next. Governor Reynolds is suing the Register for those emails, the damn emails, they're back. And like Trump's also suing the poor Register. They've just been hit with so many lawsuits this year, but it's like
stay strong.
And it's the Trump one was so stupid because
Yep.
you know, there's so much that you have to prove when you're suing like a journalistic outlet for something that they published, and
Yep.
it's just a waste. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money, and anything that we can to prevent like any kind of disingenuous or stupid lawsuits against any sort of public information, you know, publisher, like I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the lawsuits, they work to scare people, to scare media outlets from exercising their free speech rights.
Right.
You know, this is just creating protections for, you know, for these kinds of basic rights that we enjoy as Americans.
Yeah. In college, our professors always called journalism the fourth estate. Like that was a term that they threw around a lot and compared it to like essentially being like a fourth branch of government.
Yeah,
which
it's a check.
It's a check. Like it's a which is it might be a little bit extreme, but seeing journalism as sort of like a check in the whole, you know, ecosystem of checks and balances, I think is an interesting way to look at it. And having anti-SLAPP suits I think will help kind of strengthen that check.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't necessarily think about journalism or journalists, newspapers as being like distinct from, like, they are no more another branch of government than they are a extension. I think of it more as like being an extension of the public, right?
Right.
This is like we are enumerated certainly as the press, but we don't have any special powers, right? We have maybe differing responsibilities, right? You learn a thing and you go to the town square and you shout it out.
But anybody could do that. You could do that, listener.
But I think that's the important thing, right? It's like that's what's really powerful, is that we're not distinct from the people. I think that's the power of the work. It's also like the great privilege of the work, right? The reason that we have to hold ourselves to really high standards of verifying facts and making sure that what we're saying is accurate. And when we get things wrong, apologizing, right, and making corrections. I think this is all important parts of this process. And I think that I could be wrong, but I think the estates come from I don't know that it's medieval, but it's like the notion that there's the first estate, which I think is like the aristocracy, the second estate, which is the church, and then the third estate, which is the I think it's like the mercantile class.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like these are, I think the estates come from I don't know the period, but maybe a listener can write in and tell me what it is.
Write in.
I think it's like, I think it's this notion that these are three estates. This is a fourth estate with responsibilities like these other three, or that there is like a structure for trying to better. This is like a structure for better understanding kind of enumerating what those responsibilities are to the society, to the people.
Yeah. There you go. Learn something new every day.
Something new every day. But talking to someone who doesn't seem to have learned anything. Third story, in a dramatic legal shutdown, Governor Kim Reynolds has filed another lawsuit against the Des Moines Register to block the release of 4 emails between her senior staff members containing terms like, quote, Lutheran and money laundering. You'll remember Iowa Starting Line's coverage of Governor Kim Reynolds kind of like kowtowing before Congress during a hearing in Washington, D.C. She was asked whether or not she believed Lutherans were a money laundering entity. She like refused to be like, no.
She didn't answer the question. She can't speak for that. She didn't know the answer to the question.
She didn't know the answer to whether or not a branch of religion that I think she's part of, I think she's a Lutheran, was a money laundering scheme. Remarkable. She of course later said in a press conference that she did not. She had to say out loud, "I do not believe that the Lutherans are a money laundering scheme." While the governor's office provided over 800 pages of documents in response to the register's public records request, they're claiming, quote, executive privilege protects these specific communications, these 4 emails. The lawsuit argues that the governor has a constitutional right to private conversations with her closest advisors, stating that forcing disclosure would substantially and irreparably injure the executive branch. But what about her emails?
But her email.
But what about her emails?
The emails.
She doesn't
Like,
want us.
what could possibly be in those 4 emails?
Right. It's like, what if you are so concerned about what is it? Substantial or irreparable injure to the government that you run. Like, why are you saying things in emails with, like, is it your government email? Like, is it the public email that you have as the governor that you use? Like, why are you if you think these things could cause that harm to the government you run, why are you saying them?
Or is it your closest advisors
that are privately?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're really close advisors, they should also know that email is public entity.
Yeah,
so
keep those in check. Yeah.
So
somebody's messed it up.
A couple of things. I went through the lawsuit to kind of read up on kind of like why these 4 and how they got selected. So these are all related to the media prep for Governor Kim Reynolds during this period, right? I think it was ahead of the press conference. I actually didn't check the date, but this is essentially the material that she was given to prepare for answering media questions and some other information. And what I think is super interesting about all this is if you're a journalist, you are very familiar with Iowa code's protections for certain public documents, right? You could sail a ship through some of the exemptions that Iowa code makes for what has to be made public on request. Everything from like if it's a draft document, there's an exemption for draft document. If it's if it has obviously HIPAA protected protected information, if there's there are tons of exemptions that can be cited in order to prevent journalists from getting access to the documents. They're saying, we have given all this information to the Des Moines Register. They're trying to make the case, right, that we're being good actors here, but this kind of preparatory material is just something that we want to keep to ourselves. And here's the deal: there are already exemptions, right, for certain records, and if we continue to just kind of push, if we continue to just allow government officials to withhold information this way, it just empowers them to do this more, right? And so we create even larger exemptions for this material. So I mean I don't know, like the way that their complaint makes it that, we did fill, we gave them 800 pages of documents, right? Like we are being good actors here. It doesn't matter, right? Like if there is not in-state code, right? The state code that the Iowa Legislature agreed to, right, that a previous governor signed into law. If you want additional exemptions made, you can go through the legislative process to do so. But like right now, it is illegal to not give the public access to these materials.
Right. She's saying executive privilege, which isn't one of the exemptions, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So adding extra exemptions outside of the law.
So what are we talking about?
Right. She has the ability between her and her lawyer, right? That is protected communication. Any communication between the governor and the attorney general, we are not allowed to ask what Governor Kim Reynolds and Attorney General Brenna Byrd are chatting about on Slack. But we do have access to like emails that the governor is sending to staff, right? And and we should, right? Like these are people that are doing the public's business, right?
Yeah, more transparency.
Why should we allow them to do so in the darkness?
We shouldn't. That's the answer.
Write in. Let us know if
We
anyone's
should not.
listening. Like I would love to know the pro smoke-filled dark rooms argument for this. Maybe while you're in the smoke-filled dark rooms, pass a budget, Iowa Legislature, while you're back there, and maybe we can maybe I'll be more amenable to
Yeah, I'll let you withhold emails once you start passing budgets on time. That's yeah.
But what about our emails? We love to see it. We
What about the
love
emails?
to see it.
If I had a nickel for every time a female politician was hounded about her emails, I'd have
2 nickels.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Should women even be allowed to
Denise and Fire
email?
Watchers. Should women?
Dear. Oh, that'd be a good cold open for the next episode. So, Amie, should women really have access to email?
Should women?
Kind of dangerous.
Should women? Period.
Should women?
That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it and subscribe and share it with your friends. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is produced by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
I'm Amie Rivers.
And I'm Avery Staker.
Thanks for listening. We're going to sit quietly and record about 30 seconds of room sound. And then I'll clap and we'll get started. Okay?
Can I eat breakfast?
No, that would be the opposite of room sound. That would be anti-room sound.